Imagine a land stretching from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific, from the frozen wilderness of Alaska to the tropical islands of Hawaii. Today, the United States is one of the most powerful nations on Earth. But its story did not begin with skyscrapers, presidents, or modern cities. It began thousands of years ago, with indigenous peoples who built diverse societies across an enormous continent. The history of America is a story of migration, colonization, revolution, expansion, civil war, industrialization, immigration, war, and social change. It is a story filled with extraordinary achievements, but also conflict, injustice, and enormous human suffering. So how did the United States become the nation we know today? Let's go back to the beginning. The first humans arrived in North America thousands of years ago, during the last ice age. Over generations, indigenous peoples spread throughout the continent and developed hundreds of distinct cultures and societies. They adapted to deserts, forests, mountains, plains, and coastal regions. Some communities followed enormous bison herds across the Great Plains. Others relied on fishing and farming. In the Southwest, sophisticated communities built impressive stone and adobe settlements, while in the eastern woodlands, powerful alliances developed between different nations. One of the most remarkable indigenous cities was Cahokia, near the Mississippi River. Around the year 1100, it may have been home to tens of thousands of people, making it larger than many European cities of the same period. For thousands of years, these societies developed independently. Then everything changed. In 1492, Christopher Columbus crossed the Atlantic under the Spanish flag and reached the Caribbean. His voyages opened the door to centuries of European exploration and colonization throughout the Americas. Spain established settlements across Florida and the American Southwest. France explored and claimed territory around the Great Lakes and Mississippi River. England eventually focused heavily on the Atlantic coast. One of the earliest English colonies was Jamestown, founded in Virginia in 1607. The settlement nearly collapsed because of disease, starvation, and conflict. But tobacco transformed Virginia's future. The crop became enormously profitable, attracting settlers and investment. That prosperity came with a terrible cost. In 1619, enslaved Africans were brought to the English colony of Virginia, helping establish an institution that would shape American history for more than 2 centuries. Farther north, the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth in 1620. They faced severe hardship but received important assistance from indigenous people, including Tisquantum, better known as Squanto. Over the following decades, English settlements expanded rapidly along the Atlantic coast. By the 18th century, 13 British colonies had developed along the eastern seaboard. Their populations grew as immigrants arrived from different parts of Europe, while slavery also expanded, particularly in the southern colonies. For a time, the colonies remained part of the British Empire. Then came war. In the 1750s, Britain and France fought over territory in North America. The conflict became known as the French and Indian War and eventually formed part of a much larger global struggle. Britain won, but the war left the British government deeply in debt. London decided that the American colonies should help pay for their defense through new taxes. The colonists strongly resisted. Their argument was simple: no taxation without representation. Tensions increased as Britain imposed measures such as the Stamp Act and Townshend duties. Protests, boycotts, and violence spread. In 1770, British soldiers killed 5 people in Boston in what became known as the Boston Massacre. 3 years later, colonists protested the Tea Act by throwing British tea into Boston Harbor. Britain responded with harsh measures, but instead of dividing the colonies, these actions pushed them closer together. Then, in April 1775, fighting broke out at Lexington and Concord. The American Revolution had begun. George Washington became commander of the Continental Army, while political leaders including Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin pushed the colonies toward independence. On July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence. The document declared that the colonies were no longer part of the British Empire. But declaring independence was easier than winning it. The Revolutionary War continued for years. The American victory at Saratoga in 1777 convinced France to openly support the American cause. French money, weapons, soldiers, and naval power became extremely important. In 1781, American and French forces surrounded the British Army at Yorktown. After a siege, British commander Charles Cornwallis surrendered. 2 years later, the Treaty of Paris officially recognized American independence. A new nation had been born. But the United States was still fragile. The government created under the Articles of Confederation was too weak to manage the growing country effectively. In 1787, delegates gathered in Philadelphia and created the Constitution. In 1789, George Washington became the nation's first president. The young republic immediately faced enormous questions. How powerful should the federal government be? Who should have political rights? How should the country expand? And what should happen to slavery? These questions would eventually divide the nation. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson purchased the Louisiana Territory from France. The deal nearly doubled the size of the United States. The Lewis and Clark expedition then traveled across the new territory toward the Pacific, mapping unfamiliar regions and increasing American interest in Western expansion. But westward expansion came at a devastating cost for indigenous nations. As settlers moved into native lands, the federal government increasingly pressured indigenous peoples to surrender their territories. Under the Indian Removal Act of 1830, thousands of Native Americans were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands. The Cherokee and other nations endured the deadly journey that became known as the Trail of Tears. Meanwhile, slavery expanded alongside the cotton economy of the American South. By the middle of the 19th century, the United States had grown enormously. Texas joined the Union, war broke out with Mexico, and the United States gained vast territories stretching all the way to the Pacific. Then gold was discovered in California. The California Gold Rush brought hundreds of thousands of people westward and helped transform California into a major center of American life. But every new territory raised the same explosive question: would slavery be allowed? The North increasingly opposed the expansion of slavery, while Southern leaders considered slavery essential to their economic and social system. The political conflict became impossible to contain. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln won the presidency. Southern states feared that his administration would threaten slavery. South Carolina seceded from the Union, followed by several other Southern states. They formed the Confederate States of America. In April 1861, Confederate forces attacked Fort Sumter. The American Civil War had begun. For 4 years, Americans fought Americans in some of the bloodiest battles of the 19th century. Generals such as Robert E. Lee, Ulysses S. Grant, and William Tecumseh Sherman led enormous armies. At Gettysburg, Antietam, Vicksburg, and other battlefields, hundreds of thousands of lives were lost. In 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring enslaved people in the Confederate States to be free. The war finally ended in April 1865 when Robert E. Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. But only days later, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. The 13th Amendment soon abolished slavery throughout the United States. Yet freedom did not immediately bring equality. Across the South, racial discrimination and violence continued. Jim Crow laws established segregation and restricted the rights of African Americans for generations. At the same time, America was transforming economically. Railroads connected the country from coast to coast. Factories expanded. Cities grew. Immigrants arrived in enormous numbers looking for work and opportunity. Industrial giants such as Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and J.P. Morgan accumulated enormous fortunes. New York, Chicago, and other cities became centers of finance, manufacturing, and immigration. America was becoming an industrial superpower. By the beginning of the 20th century, the United States was also becoming more influential internationally. In 1917, America entered the First World War on the side of the Allies. American troops and industrial production helped strengthen the Allied war effort, and the conflict ended in 1918. The 1920s brought economic growth, automobiles, radio, movies, jazz, and a new popular culture. But beneath the prosperity were serious economic weaknesses. In 1929, the stock market crashed. The Great Depression followed. Banks failed. Businesses collapsed. Millions of Americans lost their jobs. President Franklin D. Roosevelt responded with the New Deal, a massive series of government programs designed to provide relief, recovery, and economic reform. But the Depression would not truly end until the United States entered another global conflict. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. America entered the Second World War. The country's industrial power was transformed into an enormous war machine. Factories produced ships, aircraft, tanks, weapons, and supplies for the Allies. American forces fought across Europe and the Pacific. In 1945, Nazi Germany surrendered. But the war in the Pacific continued. The United States developed the first atomic bombs through the Manhattan Project. In August 1945, atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrendered shortly afterward, bringing the Second World War to an end. The United States emerged from the war as one of the world's two great superpowers, alongside the Soviet Union. Then began the Cold War. For decades, America and the Soviet Union competed for global influence. They built enormous nuclear arsenals. They fought indirectly through conflicts such as Korea and Vietnam. And they competed in technology and space exploration. In 1969, the United States achieved one of the most famous moments in its history when Apollo 11 carried astronauts to the moon. But America was also confronting a major problem at home. African Americans continued to face segregation and discrimination. The civil rights movement challenged these systems. Leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr. demanded equality through protests, speeches, and nonviolent resistance. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Voting Rights Act of 1965 became major milestones in the struggle for civil rights. Yet the country continued to face political conflict, war, economic challenges, and social change. The Vietnam War became increasingly unpopular. In 1974, President Richard Nixon resigned amid the Watergate scandal. In 1975, the Vietnam War ended with the fall of Saigon. Then, in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. 2 years later, the Soviet Union collapsed. The Cold War was over, and the United States emerged as the world's dominant superpower. But the 21st century brought new challenges. On September 11, 2001, terrorist attacks struck New York and Washington. The United States launched the war on terror, invading Afghanistan and later Iraq. The following decades brought wars, political divisions, economic crises, technological revolutions, and dramatic changes in American society. Today, the United States remains one of the world's most powerful nations. Its history is not simply a story of victory. It is a story of extraordinary achievements and painful contradictions. It was built on ideals of liberty and opportunity, while also struggling with slavery, discrimination, displacement, and inequality. It grew from 13 colonies into a nation spanning a continent and eventually became a global superpower. From indigenous civilizations to European colonization, from revolution to civil war, from railroads and factories to space exploration, the United States has been transformed again and again. And perhaps the most important part of its history is that the story is not finished. The America of today was shaped by every generation that came before it. Its future will be shaped by the choices of the generations that come next. This is the story of the United States of America, a nation born from revolution, forged through conflict, transformed by millions of people, and still evolving today. If you enjoyed this journey through American history, subscribe to Ancient Secrets for more fascinating historical documentaries. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep uncovering the secrets of history.